Hello and moin from Hamburg. I'm Walter Matthias Kunze, the founder of Trendquest, and it's time for the daily Trend Talk. Today is Friday, the 16th of October. It's a very sunny day here in Hamburg. I hope you had a great start into your day and hope you're well. Thanks that you're here with us again. So today I'll be talking to Aparajoy Chakravarty, who's a food expert. He's a food engineer working at Kommende in Copenhagen in Denmark. And Joy also has a kind of rich background because he worked as a startup before and is connected to the startup scene in Copenhagen also as well. So I think we're having a kind of double feature. First, we're talking about food trends and also healthy trends and also how to build up these things. And as a second point, we're also talking about how startups could go on and thrive, mainly, for instance, food startups, just anyhow, if there is a corona crisis or not. He has some ideas on that. I'm very curious and very happy to have him here as an expert. So let's dive into the talk with Aparajoy Chakravarty. Okay, now I'm very happy to welcome Aparajoy Chakravarty here at our daily Trend Talk. Joy is working at Coro. It's a fruit beverage company from Denmark, starting in Copenhagen. Yeah. But before I say too much, maybe please introduce yourself. What exactly are you doing? What's your business? What are your interests?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me, Matthias. I'm looking forward for our talk. My name is Aparajoy, and I work as a scientist in liquid development in a Danish company, and the company is around 75 years old. I work in the liquid development, which makes a lot of new products, and we deal with a lot of different demographics of consumers and customers around the world and try to match their expectations from our products. Before that, I was involved in the Copenhagen startup scene, and looking forward for our talk today, Matthias.
Good. So what are your expectations? What would you think the food trends are evolving? And is this all involved or just influenced by the Corona crisis? Are people having different food preferences now than they had before?
I would say yes, they're evolving. It's a continuous process. Since the evolution, the human species are evolving, right? We see different raw materials. We have different expectations. How can we consume them, or drink them, or something? I would say they are evolving because the community is getting more global. So if I have a friend from Africa right next to me, I'm exposed to their culture as well. And when I say culture, it also includes food, because food is a big part of the culture, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, it is evolving, and with the talks like plant-based diets and healthy diets and everything, that is certainly assisting this change as well. Coming to your point regarding Corona, I would say specifically frozen foods, they are evolving, because when consumers are, I would say, not allowed or actually asked by the government to stay home and be safe and everything, so they are ordering a lot of fast moving goods, which for example are deliveries of warm food, or when they can go to the grocery shopping, they are stocking up, because you never know if you'll be able to go out as well, right? So plus the curfews that are being implemented by different countries as well. I would say, yeah, the frozen food market is actually emerging a lot. And if you combine the healthy plant-based diets, and then if you combine the sector of frozen foods, a lot of startups especially are combining these two forces together and trying to come up with solutions for people. So I would say, yeah, due to Corona, the frozen supply chain is actually evolving the most.
Well, I heard what I know also is that frozen food even is more healthy, that's what they say, than if you buy this as fresh fruit. For instance, if I have a banana here, so that banana has been harvested while still being green.
Okay.
So if you buy, you can't freeze bananas, I think they get brown. But if you buy just like fresh berries, they are also maybe harvested more or less not totally ripe. And if you buy them frozen, they have to be harvested more in a ripe state. Is it right?
Yes, yeah, that's partially right. And the second half of that equation lies in how is the supply chain. Because, of course, if a company or an importer has a really good supply chain, like they are transferring it frozen, which, by the way, might not be good for the environment for some section of people, that would hinder from buying it. But yes, you're right that the supply chain is the most important thing, especially in frozen foods or organic foods. If you think that you're buying a banana which is a bit green, because by the time it reaches you it's completely yellow, but if, let's say, assuming that the banana is frozen, you can actually harvest it when the time is right, have a supply chain which is frozen supply chain, and then it can be in front of you, de-thawed, and then it's the same quality as you expect for a banana to be. So it's kind of like different strategy to approach. At the end of the day, it's actually money matters, right? So whatever is optimized financial wise, then this is the solution for the mass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's on the fruit part. So Core is producing fruit drinks, or
Yes.
are you also doing other services?
We are, and we have been doing drinks and ice creams, and
Okay.
this is our core competencies. Maybe in next 10 plus years, we might gradually switch to some edibles. But for
Mhm.
now, the main concept is to establish the brands that we have and then create more brands. Because as I mentioned in beginning of this talk, like evolution and changes leads to a new food trend or something, right? And the job of the management in my company is to keep a track of these trends. For example, the project I'm working on is not what the society needs today. What I'm
Okay.
doing could be in next 5 years.
Okay.
For example, let me give you an example. It's a really nice example, but it's not a how do you say food example, but it's a
Mhm.
packaging example.
Okay.
So certain companies you would see they have really sustainable packs now for their beers, and you can just snap it out, and it's really sustainable because it's without any plastic or something.
Yeah,
This
I
is
see.
actually this was actually developed at least 5-10 years before. So, but the companies decided not to go ahead with it because that was not in the trend. When they saw in the 2018, 2019, this is becoming a trend. And by this, I mean sustainability or sustainable packaging.
Mhm.
And then this was their cue to release that. And the consumers were like, this is so good because they hear from TV, phones, and everything, plastic is bad, blah, 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 sustainable.
Yeah.
And then a really big company or a really big brand comes up with this solution and everyone is so happy, and boom, there you have the increase in sales of the product. So you need to prepare for it. So a better company is actually which is able to forecast what is gonna happen in the next 5 or 10 years.
Okay, short break. What are your thoughts on these trends? What are your thoughts on food trends and also on healthiness, on building up new startups in this area? Get in touch, get into the discussion, and create future now together with us. Should you have any questions, or maybe you need market insights and get connected with the experts, also let's get in touch. Trendquest is building up a workshop on these trends together with our over 600 experts of our daily trend talks and of the general trend talks. So it's your advantage to be there and to take part of this. Future always starts now, and that's why we now are going back to the talk with Aparajoy Chakravarty, who is one of the future leaders in this business. And I'm very happy to see what he is telling us for the further ongoing topics.
A better company is actually which is able to forecast what is gonna happen in the next 5 or 10 years. Of course, you do something which suddenly pops up. For example, in a local demographic region, one type of food or a flavor is coming up, and then you suddenly try to tap into it, and then it's like a really fast process. Who's the first person to tap into that? So
Yeah.
you see one drink of this flavor of this brand, the next month you see the same flavor but another competitor brand coming on the same shelf, right? So
How
this
would
is
you hunt these trends?
You have consumer insights. You do a lot of service. You ask a lot of people around. There are some third-party companies who are actually surviving and doing really well based on giving or selling the data from the people. And when I say data, it's not some secret data that is in the talks these days. It's actually those companies have people going in and doing service, whether it's online or physical one-to-one, whatever. They design their service in a way. They ask, if you have these three kind of drinks of these three flavors, if you have this drink in a sparkling version or a still version, would you like a cola with the lime flavor? Would you like a cola with this? Then they ask around 400, 500 people from different parts of a country. And then they take an average and do some statistical analysis on that. Based on that, they create a report. And then companies who are doing some product development, they buy their reports in order to conclude what they expected, or you can say in order to be on a safer side and to see if we were completely off or we were completely on the track. So it's basically a verification and validation test to see if we are thinking in the right direction or not.
So you're doing your market research, but then also globally, right?
Yes, we do it globally, especially my company. We are in, as I said, in 75 countries, but the headquarters is where I work and where the consumer insights team is. And then they are arranging and, to get different people and their surveys in. And then when we get a project, then we go to them and we say, how good would it perform? And then this is the forecast, and they actually use that data from and tell us. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long process, but sometimes something comes up which is no one expected it to be, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, and that could be a hit as well. And sometimes when you have planned 5 years of something estimation, and that could go down as well. So nothing is written on stone on this.
I'm on a daily basis following several podcasts and also reading news all over the place. That's from several sources, also international. Mm-hmm. And what I'm seeing, what the reports are, is that the kind of the amount of sugar in day-by-day drinks, just like lemonades and so on, seems to be reduced. Yeah. As a global trend. Yes. Can you confirm this?
Yes, I can. Okay. And actually, it's been forced into being a trend in a way when certain countries, they're getting really, really conscious about the consumers or the population, the health and everything, right? So some companies are implementing, it's what we call a sugar tax. This is the name of the issue here. Sugar tax. So what it means is when companies or private firms, when they try to sell whatever product they have, they need to pay a certain amount of tax based on how much sugar is in that product. And the higher the amount of sugar, the higher the tax you're going to pay. And the level or the percentage of tax is intentionally so high that the companies are being forced to rethink the strategies behind how to tweak their product to maintain the same quality and the taste and sensory aspects while reducing the sugar or making the product healthy for the customer. So I think it's a challenge for me or other people or who are working in companies like that. But if that challenge is received and worked upon well, at the end of the day, it's going to do good to the consumers as well, right? So
cool.
Yeah.
So do you, I have several questions. So of course, what we hear is the food market in the USA, for instance, is they have very higher sugar levels in food than we're having here in Europe.
Yeah.
So that's that. I think everyone, every parent, every person wishes to have the most healthy food and the most healthy drinks also. What is your opinion on this? How can the industry cope with this? So for instance, we had these discussions about plastic bottles or glass bottles. What glass is more healthy?
Yes.
We have about nearly 8 billion people on this planet. And so as you are present in, let's say, 75 countries, How can the company cope with this need and also be economically driving though?
So it is a big challenge. It is, for example, the sugar tax. No one was prepared for it. People were working for it. For example, in the next 5 or 10 years, the plan was to gradually switch down and make the products, more healthier for the consumer. But no one anticipated the tax to hit on the face in 2020 or late 2019 is when it hit it. So yes, companies were working towards it, but then the fact that in reality they were forced for it now. So it's a big issue, both health-wise and economy-wise. So what some companies are doing is making another version of the same product, but then claiming it as a no added sugar version, or something like that. It all lies how you try to convey your message, right? Then you reduce the amount of SKUs from the market, and then you increase the no added sugar version. So as a consumer, when you go there and you see no added sugar versions, it's your decision to choose whichever you want. You have 10 new flavors, let's say in drinks wise, for no added versions, and then you have 3 regular flavors that you've been drinking. Then it comes back to how to change the consumer from picking this one to the no added sugar version, right? This is what the companies are trying to achieve. Then coming to your point, what was the second question that you said about the?
The question was just like the question that we're having. Of course, everyone wants to have a healthy food and a healthy drink. So the question had been, how can you just as a company that's active in many countries be able to cope with this? Just produce healthy.
Yeah. You need to cope with it if you want to survive. This is the answer. Yeah. So if you don't cope with it, your business is going down. So it's basically taking the last bits of everything and doing your best at the end of the day. So you are basically surviving until you reach a comfortable point in your business, right? Because if you don't act now, your competition has been acting on it since last 2 years. So this is when it can become tricky, right? So you're in a race continuously, right? If, for example, let's say Nestle is working towards a product, and then let's say another competitor brand, let's say Unilever, is working towards the same prototype, it's a race. So whoever says, okay, let's just postpone and let's see what happens, by that time Unilever has already established themselves. The product is in the market, the consumer are used to it. But then if Nestle comes 2 years later, that product is not in the trend anymore because everyone knows it exists. So that's
quite interesting. I think that it sounds like it's a very fast market.
Yeah.
It's not always, of course, not always the point that the early market opener, so to say, has the best position. Let's take Microsoft with the Xbox.
Yeah.
They have been very late in the market, and everyone kind of ridiculed them, just saying, well, no, you also want to have a PlayStation thing, and they say, you want, and then Xbox is one
and
of
now
the
you have these
things.
2 giants competing against each other for new generations of consoles. So it's basically the same principle in the fast. I really like how you said it sounds like it's a fast market, because the name of this category of companies is FMGC, which is fast market consumer goods.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Fast. So what would you say? You said, okay, people are ordering the food market itself, just like the food market, so to say, has changed because people are ordering, buying more frozen food.
No. Yeah.
For your company, could you say what has changed for Coro during the last 6 months, for instance?
So what changes to us comes from the changes at the lowest level of change, which is basically the consumer, right? If the consumer decides enough is enough. I don't want sugar. I want a healthy drink. Then it escalates into a demand, it escalates into a trend, it escalates into a mandatory thing that a consumer company needs to do. So that's how it escalates, right? So at my company, we are focusing on more healthier brands. And then the stuff we have, which needs to be altered because of the sugar tax, I can assure you the whole company is focusing on that, because this is part of our policy as well, to at the end of the day, to make the consumers happy with keeping the same taste, right? So this change is what is driving us these days, especially during Corona times and the sugar tax times, right? So these two are the most important driving factors for our company, and this is the change. Usually we were working on new product developments for next 5 years, next 10 years. But now on top of that, we have another stream of workload, which is quite important as well, that you cannot even, you cannot ignore. Because as I mentioned, if you ignore, your competition is waiting for you to ignore it, so they surpass you, right? So I would say these are the two most important driving factors or the changes.
So you would say healthiness and sugar?
Yeah.
And then the Corona crisis itself, just like the political or governmental measures, how are they possibly influencing your work?
I would say the perception was they might, but actually they're not. So it's actually really nice to see how efficient planning, or being forced to have efficient planning, even more efficient planning, can lead to some good resource generation, right? So for example, as an example, if you see, I think it was Finland, which made the week into a 4-day working week. And then they realized that the efficiency and the results actually increased. They actually doubled, I think.
Okay.
So this proves my fact that it is not actually you being physically there which gets the job done. It's how you manage your work, right? So for example, today I'm working from home, and then I have a meeting. And if I am at my office desk, and if I have a meeting with a client from China, we would be having the same discussion using the same medium. So that didn't change anything for me. So, but in accordance to what you were asking, there are certain kind of companies or jobs or profiles of people which require their physical presence there, right? So I would say in that aspect, this could be a factor, of course, because the more the headcount, the better it is for certain jobs. For example, let's take an example of road work. If you cannot be there, you cannot do it using Zoom or Microsoft Teams, right? So you need to be there. So
maybe a future with robots.
Yeah, future with robots. Looking forward for that. Yeah. But I would say it actually made companies realize that it could be possible to resource your, the resource planning needs some more stringent thoughts into that, and it shouldn't affect the results that much, is what I have witnessed. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're in home office, and you also had your own limitations. You just told me in the prep talk before. You work in 3 days at home, 2 days at site, but how does it work with your laboratory? So you can't do currently not do the laboratory from remote.
Yeah. So we have the system developed. So we follow the policies by the government, of course, and that system says how many percentage of people, according to the policy, can actually come. And then we had our desks away from each other as per the government regulation as well. Coming to a point of laboratory, it's a fairly big laboratory, and we actually agree with the rules from the government as well, and we have the same exact system for the lab as well. So we cannot be more than this percentage of people in the lab at the same time. Plus we wear protective equipments and everything like that. So it's really important you follow the policies that the government has prescribed. And then coming to my job, the 2 days I have in the lab, I plan in a way that there are least amount of people in the lab. Of course, there's a minimum number that we regulate. And then sometimes one person has planned to be in the lab, but the other person is working from home that day. This is an internal communication that we have. Okay, I'm planning to go to the lab this day, this week. Would you be there? Blah, blah, blah. We both see the common, the planning that we have. And when I'm okay with that, then only I go to the lab.
Interesting. So it's, could we say, sounds a little bit just like you're saying, we are same efficient or maybe more efficient than before?
Mm-hmm. I would say so. I would say so because when you go to the lab, I mean, of course, you are completely focused on that task, right?
Yeah.
Because you came from your work in your public transit, wearing a whole PPE just to do this thing and be done. So this is why. And then, for example, if you're in the lab, you're doing your stuff, you accumulate certain tasks which are actually required to be in the lab. For example, if I'm at my site every day, I have the freedom to go in the lab whenever I want. But then when you are restricted to work from home, you plan efficiently. You plan, now these are the 2 days I'm going to the lab, and these are the 6 things I need to do for the next week as well. So you try to optimize your time as much as you can, because you're gonna, if you miss a task today, technically someone else might take the spot next day, and then you might increase the percentage. So you plan accordingly. So I actually read in a really nice book that having a plan is nothing, but planning is everything. So you actually need to plan how to achieve your target. You cannot just say, oh, I have a plan, I'll do it. You need to plan from A to Z completely, right? And then only you can be optimized about it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that gives me the chance also to go to our second topic, so to say, just like startup culture.
Yeah.
So you've been working in a startup also in Denmark, Copenhagen, or
yeah.
So what did you? How long had you been there?
In Denmark or in the startup? In the startup area, I worked for around 1 year, and then while I was doing my master's from Technical University of Denmark, I took 40 to 50% of my coursework was based on how the startup culture is and how to do business development and how the market analysis and stuff like that. So that came in really handy. Yeah.
So
let's say 3 years.
What?
3 years in the startup area. Yeah.
So then, of course, the question is, why did you leave the startups?
Why do we need the startups?
No, why did you leave? Why did you leave?
Leave. Okay.
The other question is also important, but first that.
So why did I leave startup? You see, from academic perspective, I'm an engineer, right?
Yeah.
So when you go into your startup, you forget that you're an engineer. You are basically doing engineering, you're doing management, you're doing finances, you're doing communication, you're doing branding, you're doing everything. So the reason I'll start with why I went to a startup, followed by why I left. So the reason I went to startup work life is because I wanted to experience this. I hear from people that this is so much, it's a really interesting kind of position and blah, 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 blah. So I wanted to experience that, and this led me to work for a startup. And I can certify it is exactly what they say. And there were several myths that I had in my head which were broken. So that was a really nice exposure, and I wanted to use and learn more stuff. For example, if you are put in a situation when you're the only one who needs to fix this situation, but you lack some resources or the knowledge about it, you will do your extreme best to communicate to people and get it done, because you cannot just sit back and say, I'll do it tomorrow, because no one else is coming tomorrow to do it. Tomorrow you have to show up and do it again. So so in startup, it's a drive, you get high from all this. So this is why I went into the startup. And the reason I left, because it was the same startup I was working with. And coming to my point, academically, I'm a food engineer. And I felt like I had contributed enough to that startup for that startup to have a confident food product. And beyond that, I was not learning much. So I had reached a saturation phase. For me, going every day was solving everyday's problems. So I wanted to have some more resources from which I can learn even more, and then I can contribute that knowledge as a new knowledge to a newer company. So this is why
Cool.
I left the startup area. But
Sounds
I'm
like a
still,
reasonable approach.
yeah, yeah,
Learn, go on, learn more, and
yeah,
then take the next steps.
exactly. Yeah.
Sounds like, how long are you there at Kodo right now?
I will complete 2 years in Jan 2021.
Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe I guess as it's the tradition or kind of culture that you won't stay there until the end of your life.
Yes, not until end of my life, but the job I have now, the role I have now, it changes every day or every week. As
Awesome.
we discussed the first point, food trends. Food
Yeah.
trends, and the first thing I said in the beginning of this talk is like evolution, right? So
Yeah.
I cannot go this week working on a project that I would know I would be doing the exact similar thing or the same thing next week and the next week.
Yeah.
And this is really important to me for my piece, that I'm faced with new challenges every day
Great.
or every week at least. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that. So, but now let's go back. We said startup culture hit by Corona, and we are
Yeah.
saying, okay, what to do now in the future. So it sounds like you're still have your ties, your connections, your colleagues, friends, whatever, in the startup scene.
Yeah.
So what would be your recommendations, just like in these times?
I have connections with them in a way that every now and then we meet for a beer or something. But of course, I'm not allowed to exchange knowledge as per my contract now, because I get it, right? So what I would recommend for a startup to do, especially these days because of Corona, is to brand your product in a way that is organic, because for some reason some population or some people, they perceive like products which are not organic are not healthy to consume during this corona crisis.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is one of the main reason. The other thing that the startup should do is to, instead of looking for new how do I say, new markets, they should strengthen the market they're in now. And the ways of strengthening their presence is to make sure you're not lacking on any demand orders from, your, for example, grocery stores or cafes that you have your products in. You need to make those people who are your immediate circle happy. This is the time you need to fulfill their orders and not say, can we do it next month or next 2 months? Because without telling them, you're focusing on a new market, and that's taking some of your physical resources or financial resources.
That's a good saying. Make your
Yeah.
immediate circle happy. So not
Yeah.
just like say, well, we want to reach out our customers in New Zealand,
Yeah.
but we forgot our customers just like
Exactly.
in
So your
Hamburg or
customers,
Copenhagen or Europe.
exactly. Your customer in your city is not happy with you, but you're focusing on New Zealand. Don't do that. Make everyone happy who is near to you. Third thing I would say,
nothing against New Zealand. It's nice
yeah,
place.
exactly. If it's a big part of your inner circle, you're on a safer ship. But if it's a small circle, it's easy for you to make them happy. So it's like a flip side of a coin, right? Another thing I would suggest is to reach out to your local cafes. So even if you don't want to sacrifice looking out for new customers, because I can imagine working in a startup, it's really a hard decision to say, okay, guys, for the next month, we are not looking for any new customers. We are just focusing on what we have. What you can do to compensate for this is, while you make your inner circle happy, try to get new customers from that inner circle in the same vicinity. For example, in Copenhagen, certain neighborhoods are doing it. So when I say neighborhood, it's not even Copenhagen city. It's different communities or communes is what we call. So one commune has, let's say, 6 or 7 startups. They are making their inner circle happy and looking for same customers in that circle. For example, if you're present in 2 cafes, why not go to a third cafe and say, guys, this is the thing, we wanna push our product, and if you'd be interested or not, rather than going for e-commerce, which might help you but might take some resources from you. And mind you, as a startup, this is a time for thoughtful spending as well. You cannot go crazy on some crazy ideas as well.
Joy, as I understand, you are referring mostly now to food startups, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so but if we say we transfer this, okay, so you say, okay, food startup would focus on the local cafes.
Yeah.
So if it's a service startup or
If it's a service startup,
whatever, yeah.
I think it's a golden opportunity for a service startup. For example, it depends what kind of service. If you can give me an example of a service startup, because service startup could also be food delivery. This is a golden chance for them. Service startup could also be, for example, people who come and install your, electric stuff and everything.
Yeah.
This is a good thing as well. So I would say if you're a service startup which deals with B2B and not B2C, I'm afraid I need to have some more time to think of if a service startup, B2B startup, how could they approach this strategy or not? Because
sure.
to be honest, I don't have so much experience with B2B service startups. I've been working with B2C startups. So yeah, we can arrange a talk some other day, and I can
let's do that.
For that. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. What else? So let's say, but I think many of these things are kind of transferable. These things are transferable for other startup scenes. Yeah. So as I understand, Copenhagen has a huge startup scene, is it?
Yeah, that's true. It's emerging, and it's emerging every day. Yeah.
Great. So let's say, what would be your personal outlook? So on your branch, on your industry for, let's say, the next 5 years.
I would say we are always looking out for startups which are separating themselves and trying to come up. So again, going into these food service / consumer startups, what we do is we see because consumer insights also takes into account all these startups which are working, because these startups are connected to the local people. We are connected to the local people in 80 countries. But if you're a startup, the trends and the mannerisms and everything of the local population better than anyone else, right?
Okay.
So this is what, as a firm, we as a multinational firm, that we are trying to tap into. How can we reach that level of extracting local data, not international data, right? So this is what the consumer insights from my work is actually working with now. And then they have some common stances with the startups who are working locally, and then we are working on a multinational level. That's why you would see the product we are working on for next 5 years. It's not like the startups don't have idea about it. Yep. They still get an idea about it, and again, it's a race who does it. At the end of the day, it's how the resources are planned and how efficient the party is, right? So
cool. Really, I really would like to talk to you again in a year and see how things have been evolving.
Yeah.
So as our time is running to the end, so we are traditionally having 2 points. On one point, what would you say would be your motto or your claim, your belief sentence?
Personally or professionally?
Your choice.
Okay. I would say there's a common point, both personally and professionally, is me as a scientist or me as the firm I work in. We have this mission and vision of producing healthy and healthy consumer foods. So at the end of the day, we want to make the consumer happy, and if we can incorporate health into it, that's a bonus, right? And then personally, I believe in saying openly if I don't know about anything. I agree with, I actually acknowledge the stuff that I'm not aware of. For example, this B2B startup, I didn't know about it, and this is why I said, you need to give me some time. I need to look into it. So this has been my motto, and it has helped me in my personal and professional life. Because when you say, I don't have enough information about this, but if you give me some time, I'm going to prepare, you display honesty. You display that you're keen to know more about it, that you're going to go and read about it. So another thing, if this can be translated into a professional one, is a startup / a company or a project leader or a technical lead needs to realize when to say no. For example, if you're working on a project and you keep on working on it, but you're just working on it without realizing maybe we should stop now. An efficient project is, or a project leader is the person who knows when to kill a project and start on something new. And this is the quality that serial entrepreneurs have the most in them. They know when to initiate, when to kill it, and begin a new venture. So this is quite an important thing that I follow as well.
Cool. Well, that obviously that doesn't fit all into that YouTube thumbnail title.
Yeah.
Let's see. So first you said, but I write them down, and we can put them also in the description of the YouTube video. Yeah. So you're saying, me as a scientist, producing healthy consumer foods is important, and we want to make the consumer happy. Yeah. And if it's by health, then this is a bonus.
Yeah.
And so you also said, if something is new to me, give me. Pardon?
Timing is key. You need to know when is the time to say no.
Timing is key. Yeah, let's say that. That's a good sentence. Timing is key. So the other thing, your book recommendation. What would you recommend?
There are a lot, but the one that is coming in my head right now is Drive by Daniel Pink. And in that book, he talks about what lies in the mentality of motivating other people as a leader. So the author delves into the details of how people are motivated. Yeah. In deeper sense, not by saying you should be motivated, but understanding the personalities and how to motivate them.
Well, I'll look it up. So it's called Drive.
Yeah.
Daniel
Pink.
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, I found it. Oh, it's even available as an ebook, as Audible, whatever you want. That's great.
Yeah, it's one of the top 10 times bestseller as well.
Awesome.
Yeah,
really good. Well, thanks a lot for attending.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I'd say we see each other again in a year at latest.
Yes, let's do that.
See how the branch of the market has evolved.
Yes.
So,
perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Okay, what are your thoughts on these trends? What are your thoughts on food business, food trends in general, and also on the topics of healthy food, for instance? Let's get in touch. Get into the discussion. Write your comments down below and let us hear your opinion on these things, on these trends. How important they are for you, or also maybe you're founding a startup. You're in a startup, you're in a corporation and like to do something else. Let's talk. Future always starts now with you, with me, with us, with everyone. And so if you want to move something, if you'd like to move the future, if you'd like to have a better, a good, wealthy, healthy future, it's up to you. See you soon, at latest, at the next daily Trend Talk, and have a great day.